The Great Depression was a period in American history that impacted the lives greatly. It was one of the most depressing times in American history. With the economy low, food scarce, and unemployment rates high, there wasn't many options. During this historic piece of time, Americans were suffering due to the conditions they had to endure. Most of the things that happened had a huge impact on the lives of many Americans. In this historical event, there were suffering, hardship, and success. The Great Depression started in 1929 when the stock market was declining. The stocks were decreasing drastically. As the stocks decreased, people that were investing money into the stock market were losing their money. Then the people began to pull out their money from the stock market, all because that they were scared of losing more than they already had. Most of the money that was invested in stocks were financed, so the banks were losing all of their money because the people at that time were not able to pay them back. This caused the banking system to fail. With the banking system declining, people who deposit their money were to lose their money, all because of the fact that the bank had their money, the money of the citizens. There was a day where the stock market completely collapsed. This happened in 1929, the seed of the Great Depression in America. This day was known as the Black Tuesday. This event caused many to go poor. Now that people are poor, they are not able to spend money as they were to a while ago. This causes business to go out of business because of the lack of customers. Sales on cars went down drastically because of the recession. The people weren't able to afford to buy cars. People lost jobs and weren't able to afford the things they want because of the recession. With everyone poor, the amount of spending was being cut. This means that the economy is doing bad. With no one spending any money, the economy was going downhill. The farmers in the farming industry began to decline due to the weather and climate. There was a drought in the area. This drought has dried up the farmland. Another factor that caused the loss of profit in the farming industry was also due to the amount of people who weren't able to afford groceries. The people were broke. As things aren't looking good for our farmers, the matter couldn't get any worse. Well, that's up until the Dust Bowl striked. The farmlands were being destroyed by a disaster known as the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl occurred in the 1930s, ruining farmlands and towns. The Dust Bowl was a large pickup of dust that can do a lot of damages to the land. The Dust Bowl was traveling at a speed of a whopping 60 miles per hour. Farmers lost tractors, barns, crops, tools, fences, and good soil because of this. Most of their investment was destroyed by heaps of dust. Over 100 million acres of farmland was destroyed in the pathway of the storm. Everywhere was buried under thick dust. This caused the farming industry to go downhill. The Dust Bowl destroyed many homes, leaving the people who lived in them to be homeless. There were over 500,000 of people who were homeless because of it. The people with the homes are forced to travel elsewhere because their homes were destroyed. Their main goal now is to travel to California, where everything's supposed to be better. With California untouched by the Dust Bowl, the victims knew where to travel in hopes of finding a land with a better economy. With that in mind, they pursue their journey to California. On the journey, the majority of people were hungry and on the verge of dying. Many died during the migration to California. It was a harsh migration for them. After all this, one man brought hope and light back to the eyes of America. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States of America, became president. The Great Depression was something he could not afford to avoid. With his talents and abilities, he in fact will try to restore the economy and bring America back to its rightful conditions. Having to come to office at the worst time in American history wasn't easy, but that didn't stop Franklin D. Roosevelt in pursuing his vision to restore the United States of America. In fact, he used many methods to restore the economy. One of them was called the New Deal. The New Deal was a program where other programs were created in order to stimulate the economy. Within the New Deal, the WPA Act was passed, a part of the New Deal. WPA stands for Work Progress Administration. This act provided many Americans with unskilled jobs. This was very universal because of the jobs they offer does not require much skills, so anyone can do it. This act provided many Americans with a job, which in fact helped stimulate the economy. Another thing that was introduced was the FDIC, which stands for Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. The FDIC was an act that was passed so that the banks would not fail anymore. The banks were given a certain limit that they offered to their customer. The limit for it back then was $20,000. This means if a bank goes down under, then the person's money up to $20,000 is saved. The FDIC was basically a type of insurance. Another thing that was introduced was the Social Security Act. It gave the elderly people funds so that they can survive. As you get older, you won't have much energy to do work. This was a solution to that. Franklin D. Roosevelt also invested money into railroads. The making of railroads provided jobs, as in construction, welding, and wood cutting. The railroads proved beneficial to the American society because it was used to transport supplies and raw materials. After having the acts to pass, the economy showed boosted results. The economy was stimulated and was reaching upwards. The level of unemployment started to decrease. The economy stayed settled for a little bit. Then, World War II broke out. World War II caused the economy to stimulate quickly. It had pumped up the economy due to its activities. It provided many Americans with jobs and it stresses supply and demand. Motor factory, welding companies, and rubber factories started to produce tanks, weapons, and armory. Food markets started to produce military rations, and clothing companies started to make uniforms and such for the soldiers. There was a high demand for workers and high incomes, seeing as the income of the factories came from the government. A big surprise hit. Women started to join the workforce. This was a big impact because this promoted women equality. Women were needed in order to make weapons, tanks, food, and clothing, all because the men were out fighting. During World War II, victory was on America's side. At the same time, Franklin D. Roosevelt had passed away. This was a tragic moment for America, seeing that he did so much to restore America. This was a big loss. On the other hand, the economy was back up and running. Everything had gotten better where everyone can go back to pursuing the American dream. This was the end of the Great Depression. The Great Depression had a huge impact in a lot of the American lives. The Americans experienced a great time of hardship, where the stock market had crashed, the Dust Bowl ruined many acres of land. In the end, there was success. Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration did play a big part in the Depression as well. He restored the economy, making it better for the American lives. He won't be forgotten, as he did so much. In the end, all hope was restored, even when America was on the downfall.